Morning, everyone. I'm glad Liz is on top of it. Appreciate it. Welcome everybody here today. You call the meeting to order. Everyone please stand for pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As usual, please hold cell phones. Ms. Sutton, could you have roll call?
Mayor Plummer,
Here.
Commissioner Brooks,
Here.
Commissioner Fields,
Here.
Commissioner Gray,
Here.
Commissioner Withrow.
Here.
We have a quorum and ready for the transaction of business.
Thank you, Stephanie. Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. That brings us to item 4, approval of the minutes. We have one meeting for June 13, 2023. May I have a motion to approve those minutes as presented?
So moved.
I have a motion to have a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions or needed revisions on this item? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. That does bring us to ordinance 2023-6, which is our fiscal year 24 budget ordinance. When we do make the motion to approve the ordinance, we will need to clarify whether we are approving draft A or draft B, and then we will read that into the record. So, as you all know, we must hold a first and a second reading by the end of this month to adopt our budget. This is our second reading. The only really outstanding item that we've had on the table for discussion is the question of hazardous duty retirement. So I did receive direction from Commission a couple of meetings back and from some of you that they felt that it was important that we continue to look at the hazardous duty retirement. So we drafted 2 options of the budget, and that's what's been presented. I'm not going to go into a lot of that because we've kind of discussed it at length here, but I want to make sure that we're putting some things out there very clearly. So draft A did take a more conservative approach. It began to put some funding towards the hazardous duty retirement, but would not make moves in this year towards that plan. The way it was funded is it could have taken a couple of years to build up towards that. Draft B was a little bit, or quite a bit more aggressive in the funding for that, and did set aside funding to situate us to the point where we would be able to consider moving towards hazardous duty retirement mid-year this year. So there were cuts made in the police and fire department in order to achieve that funding, whether it was related to holding positions vacant, reduced pay adjustments from what was originally kind of thought about, as well as some deferral of the projects. So the retirement would be looked at as in lieu of the larger wage adjustment that we would be proposing in a later agenda item. So there's no doubt we would prefer to give larger wage adjustments to all of the employees but the numbers didn't quite work out that way. So you will see the next item has a correlating A and B depending on how we move forward with this agenda. If we did give the larger raises to the employees, of course, retirement costs more as well. So it could affect the timing of the potential for implementing the hazardous duty retirement. Certainly a large cost item that has ongoing costs, and we've talked about it would require us to increase our revenue over the next couple of years, and that would be looking at adjusting tax rates and adjusting some fees in order to fund this in future years. Do want to make sure, and we've said this, once we are in, we cannot get out of the plan. And then, I want to make sure it's clear that I'm not indicating this as a promise that this will cure turnover. Obviously, as a employee side perspective, having a competitive wage and benefits package is always something we want to strive for, but there are a number of reasons why employees leave an organization. So I don't want to look at you all in the face and promise you that this is going to be a magic cure for turnover. But we did look at the data, and I shared with you all who in surrounding communities has hazardous duty and who does not, and we certainly are in the minority for communities our size to not be offering it. And then the last piece I wanted to kind of highlight or touch on is the county side of the equation. It had expressed to you all before that the county budget has been submitted and approved. You know, I did talk to the judge again this week, so that has been submitted to the state. They expect that approval. There would not be county funding available for this year. I did ask the question about, well, what about future ongoing years? And he said, there's certainly discussions when those budgets get set. You know, he can't predict the future or have that crystal ball. However, he did express some concerns about what the implications are for the county employees as well. So he would have some reservations about that. There's other ways things can get funded. We talked about increasing revenues. There's also reduced expenses. We've done a pretty great job of trying to reduce the expenses as much as possible. These departments don't have a lot of fat on them. Across the board, all the departments, they're not spending willy-nilly. There's not a lot of fat, but there may be some deferral of equipment replacements and things like that, because this is a ongoing cost versus a one-time cost. So wanting to express the continued reservations or hesitations from the county. There was no way that it would be funded in the future, but there certainly was not a supportive indication at this point either. So I wanted to kind of outline that. I know that's all stuff we've talked about before, but I wanted to make sure that was all put on the table again before consideration. Are there any questions on what I've presented before you? So I believe the proper order is we would take a motion in a second, and then we can discuss the item further, and then we can take a vote.
I move that we accept and go with Plan B.
We have a motion, may I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Brian, would you mind reading
Sure,
into the
I'll be glad
record
to.
for me? Thank you.
So this will be ordinance 2023-6. An ordinance of the city of Paris, excuse me, Kentucky, adopting the annual budget for fiscal year July 1, 23 through June 30, 24, estimating revenues and resources and appropriating funds for the operation of the city of Paris. Before the Board of Commissioners has reviewed the budgetary revenues and expenses for the city for the 2023 fiscal year, now therefore be it ordained by the Board of Commissioners of the City of Paris that the annual budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 23 and ending June 30, 24 be adopted as follows. On the governmental side, the estimated beginning fund balance is $11,053,216. Budgeted revenues for the year will be an additional $10,621,025 for total funds budgeted available as $21,674,241. Budgeted expenditures would total $11,492,789. On the proprietary fund, the estimated beginning fund balance of July 1 is $461,293. Budgeted revenues through the fiscal year would be $21,422,336 for total funds available budgeted as $21,883,629, and budgeted expenditures during the year of $21,635,441, which would leave the proprietary budgeted ending fund balance on June 30 of 24 at $248,188.
So if it is the pleasure of the commission, we can kind of go around the table and see if there are any questions or comments on the topic. Is there anybody who wants to start, or we can?
Well, I've got three concerns, basically, whether the county's going to do it, or help us out in the future. And is that 4%, is that going to be an ongoing thing every year, or is that, taxes? for the local people?
I would anticipate, so the way the statute is written is the local body can adopt an increase in the tax rate up to 4% without it being subject to a recall vote. The local commission can establish a tax rate above the 4%. They could establish a tax rate that is needed to fund the budget. However, the citizens could, put in a recall for that, and there would be a vote on that. I would anticipate that we would need to consistently go to at least that 4% mark for a couple of years until we've settled out the funding. I believe it would be more than 1 year that we would be looking to bring that forward. Now, there's a lot of factors that come into play when creating a budget. There's certainly, as we see growth, as we see other things, our tax rate is pretty low when we look at comparison, but we want to make sure we're taxing what's right for our community. But I would say that I would anticipate bringing forward for more than 1 year that 4% rate in order to help fund this.
Well, we're only making about $650,000 a year off of property tax,
Right.
even with a 4% increase. I
It's
mean,
gonna take a long time to
That's
get
not
there.
gonna offset what this is gonna cost. I think we're talking,
Right.
close to $600,000 to get in, if we are able to get in.
Correct.
The next year it'll be $1 million, the year after that it'll be $1.5 million, and then $2 million. So, I mean, my concerns are 2025 and further, but, I mean, if we're committed, and I think we can do this, we've got to look at revenue streams.
Sure.
There's got to be some other revenue source, whether it's more jobs out here and more economic development, some other creative tax, a disposable container tax or something like
We like that.
So, something to stimulate and get more revenue. I think if we're going in this direction, we've got to have more money. And I guess that would be one part of it, raising the property tax, but that's, you're only talking maybe, what, $30,000, $40,000 or something?
Now, and, excuse me, sometimes we're just gonna need the 4% to equal the current year tax rate because of how the calculation goes through as far as how the state calculates. There's a compensating rate, and then there's also the 4% rate. And sometimes we just need that 4% rate to equal what our current year revenues are. So even if you want to kind of look at this, the property tax side of it to help fund this, then, you're talking more than a 4% increase.
Yeah.
Because just how the calculation goes. And you're right. I mean, we have seen property tax kind of increase over the years to where we're probably around the $800,000 mark. But I think next year, looking at our calculations, just doing the 4% would probably only add 15 to 20,000 onto that.
So we've got to look in other areas, and we can do it. I mean, that's, but we still got to be prudent on our spending.
Yeah.
It's going to make everything else tight, and we've been tight before, so.
What about some unexpected expense? Would we have that kind of money to cover?
So the general fund is in a good position, which is part of the equation of being able to say, because this is a risk, this is a financial risk. The general fund is in a position that we're able to even have this discussion. Certainly, I know that years back, this discussion couldn't even occur. So I do believe we have the fund balance for a one-time unexpected situation to occur. Now, it's important that we do keep that general fund healthy, because you look into situations if you had an economic downturn, or you hit a major recession, or something that was not one time in nature, we certainly want to be able to use those funds to continue to provide quality government services. But I do believe that we are in a spot with our general fund where if we had a one-time situation occur, we would be able to cover it. And that's talking tornadoes or something like that, we would be able to fund that. That being said, the reason why with the proposal A and the original hesitation before the cuts were made is if we dip too much into our fund balance for recurring costs, we're gonna eat away at that year over year. But I believe that we're in a good position right now that we'd be able to cover almost at any one-time item that came our way.
Yeah, I agree.
And I guess, one of the concerns also is our community partners. I guess we need to let those folks know that we're, down the road, that those folks are somehow to become self-sufficient in order for us to be able to, to take care of our employees here first too. I think that's something that they're going to have to understand as we go forward, with this.
There are certainly only two sides to the equation, revenue and expenses, and you either have to find a way to cut expenses or to increase the revenues. And so if we got into a difficult time, and certainly in order to make sure our budget is tight going forward, community partners is an area that we can look to bring that back if that's the desire. But we could find ourselves, if we did hit a tough time, part of that conversation and is, what potential reduction in service that you would want to be looking at. Because that's always the question, is if you can't find the money to fund it, we can't print the money. We have to say, well, what do we do now that we want to no longer do going forward? And that's just
exactly, and that, one of my points is that we need to understand that if in 2025, we're $500,000 short or more, the only way you can make up that kind of money that quick is layoff. And in my opinion, I mean, that would be the only way to that kind of money, cutting $50,000 and $60,000, that there's a jeopardy, down the road that, layoffs could happen. I mean, we're always under that. I mean, we never, that I can remember in my 41 years, ever had to really lay anybody off. But if economics change and get in a situation that's, I mean, even if you cut your community partners by a couple of thousand, that doesn't get it. You're talking, hundreds of thousands of dollars that's going to be required to be paid to the state. So we just need to, going forward, understand that and move on. Let's do something.
Are there any other questions, concerns? I want to make sure that we get it all on the table and address anything. Hearing none, Stephanie, could you please call the roll?
Mayor Plummer,
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks.
Yes.
Commissioner Fields,
Yes.
Commissioner Gray,
Yes.
Commissioner Withrow.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. That brings us to second reading of ordinance 2023-7. This is related to the pay scales that would be revised come the July payroll. So this one as well is presented with a draft A and a draft B, but because we've collected draft B in the budget, I would recommend you propose in your ordinance draft B as the attachment here. And so what that is to run through is the pay scales for employees not in police, fire, EMS. It is adjusted by 3%, and employees would be placed within those pay scales. And then for police, fire, and EMS, it is on 1%. So that is to say, employees would continue based on performance to be eligible for their step adjustment. So you'd be looking at about a 3.5% for police, fire, EMS, and you're looking at about a 5.5% for the remainder of your employees. We do have some departments, the electric department is the one that comes to mind for me, that there may be some additional movements within those steps because of a market concern there. And then we've had some discussions that transparently, we have done a pay study and looked at our scales comparatively, and wages continue to increase, and we know that there's always that demand to make sure our compensation is in a good position. So it would be my intent to bring forward a mid-year additional pay adjustment to be considered later in the year in order to put our employees a little bit further ahead in the pay scales. At this point, you know, we want to see how the revenues start to shake out. But I want, you know, there is an intent for a mid-year adjustment as well.
I would move we amend the employee pay scale and classification ranges as presented, as it coincides with, I guess, B.
Second.
And so that would be ordinance 2023-7, which is an ordinance related to the amendment of employee pay scale and classification ranges. Do I have to read the whole thing?
Just one question, when does payroll run in July? Or does it run on like the first?
So the first one's a 6, so then it would start on the 7th, or
I'm
7th
just,
is the.
my question is gonna be when the new rates take effect.
Historically, but looking back, they are the first check issued in July. So
Yeah.
when I looked at that,
That's the way it typically was done. The first check you get in July. I know it's not.
I always thought it was with the second payroll.
So like if payroll
Because-
runs on July 7th, that will include 1 week of pay in June and 1 week of pay in July.
and we have not, when I look back at it, split the weeks. It
That's
was
what I was
the full pay period based on check date. And that's just what I looked
Because I don't think that we can split week. Because once we update the wages system, it's that payroll.
through. Right, it would be an
Part there.
extremely manual process to split those
So would
weeks.
this take effect on July 8th instead, if that's the right day?
I mean, that's how I've always thought that whenever we've done the first pay, after we've done the first payroll in July, then we adopt these new pay scales.
Wait, actually payroll runs on Wednesday, not Friday, right? I mean, it's deposited.
So it runs Sunday through Monday, so it would be June 19th to July 2nd for a paycheck date of July 7th.
So with this, I don't think we can make it retroactive.
No, it would start.
It would
July
start July 3rd.
July 3rd.
Yeah.
Right.
So then employees would expect to see it in their check dated July 21st.
Correct. Yep.
I think everybody agreed with that, but it was good to state it. So
Yes.
Yeah.
So this ordinance will say the ordinance shall be effective on July 3, 2023.
Correct.
Is that everyone on board with that?
Mhm.
Okay. Why don't I read it? Ordinance 2023-7, an ordinance related to the amendment of employee pay scale and classification ranges. Now therefore be ordained by the City Commission of the City of Paris that the pay scales and grades attached as Exhibit A, which is actually Plan B, incorporated into this ordinance and as is set out in full or adopted as the governing pay scales, steps, and grades for all full-time employees of the City of Paris in accordance with KRS 83A-070 until such time as the City Commission may amend these pay scales, steps, and grades. The ordinance also adopts all positions outlined in the exhibit. This ordinance shall be effective on July 3, 2023. You got all those changes?
And for the employees listening, that's your check dated 7/21. Have a motion. Did we have a second?
Mhm.
And we have a motion, a second. Thank you. Can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Fields?
Yes.
Commissioner Gray?
Yes.
Commissioner Withrow?
Yes.
Mayor Plummer?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay. That brings us to consent item. There are 4 items for consideration. Are there any items that anybody would like removed and discussed separately? Okay, hearing none, may I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to regular agenda. Item 7 is the May financials. Brad?
Okay, thank you. So on page 56, you'll see our cash balances in the general fund. At the end of May, our operating funds were at $10,992,000. Restricted funds were at $94,213, giving us a total cash balance of $11,087,049. One thing to point out is the year-to-date interest income. We're up to, as the end of May, was $105,000. If you just look at the previous year, for the end of May, we were right around $20,000. So obviously, interest rates increases have been helping out with some of our extra revenue as well too. Moving on to page 57 and 58, just real quick, our total revenues at the end of May were at $11,670,532. Our total expenditures were at $9,231,722, giving us revenues exceeding our expenditures by $2,438,000. When we go over to our projected column, specifically in the revenues, I've looked at deposits all the way through last Friday, just to kind of make sure we've got the revenues pretty well forecasted out. The only issue that we really kind of have at this point in time is on our insurance fee. We had a budget of $2 million. Right now we're projected to be about $1,950,000, so about $50,000 under budget. Other than that, all the other revenues are looking pretty good, pretty solid for the year. From a projected standpoint, on total revenues, we're looking at $11,840,000. Total expenditures are at $10,386,000, with projected revenues over expenditures of $1,454,000. The one thing I would just kind of caution on that number is we had received $1.2 million or $1.3 million in ARPA funds. So if we kind of pull that number out, looking at right around $200,000 as far as revenues over expenditures on our projections and everything. So next couple pages, 59 has got the total kind of a 12-month trailing 12 months of revenues for all of our taxes and license fees, just so you have kind of a comparison. How we've seen some growth over the last couple years and how we kind of have maintained those revenues really since about since January, since about middle of the year. So I won't go into any kind of specifics on those. We'll do some more updating and analysis when we have all our June revenues kind of in there as well. Let's see here, and then on page 64 is just kind of a summary by department of what our actual expenditures are. Kind of back up to our budgeted columns there. We do have our adjusted that was approved. As far as amendments go from last couple of meetings, and so you can still see that as far as the projection goes, about $90,000 under budget for expenditures goes that we've finished up the year. So kind of right in line with everything we've got approved. We're looking really good on expenditures. Next couple pages are kind of the line by line item, and then starting on page 68, we have the cash balances for the utility fund. So utility fund, total operating funds were right around $1,009,681. Restricted funds were at $1,900,478, gave us a total cash balance of $2,910,000. I do want to kind of just point out down in our restricted funds that we still are maintaining kind of a savings balance around $300,000 while continuing to grow what we were setting aside from the collection of the meter fees, which was roughly about $38,000 to $40,000 a month within that account. So still seeing some good growth within the savings side of the utility fund. And then moving over to, we're moving down to page 69. Our total revenues at the end of May were $10,115,834. Total expenditures are $8,795,374. Do you have a revenues exceeding expenditures by $1,320,460? If we look at our projected column, a couple things we have projected revenues of $18,510,455. We have not yet really tapped into the grants and loans, number one for the transfer station and also for the water plant projects of $7.4 million. we will be carrying those forward, and I still have those as projected expenditures within our projections down below. So total expenditures projected at $18,516,162, leaving us with expenditures exceeding revenues by just $5,700. So really close budget-wise on utility fund, but looking to probably still stay in the positive on that with some of the estimates we have in there. Then page 70, you kind of see more of the breakdown by the departments as far as what the amended budgets, as well to adding the $289,000 along those lines. So, and then pages starting with 71 on down through, you have more of the detail and printouts from the local government software as well too. So that's our May financials.
I would move we accept the financial report as presented by Brad.
Second.
A motion and a second. Are there any questions, comments, and further discussion? If not, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to item B, which is a item related to the additional audit expense by RFH auditors. Sorry. Brad?
Sure. So we kind of have been having discussions, and this is something they had presented back to us in March when they had issued the audit report, but we wanted to kind of discuss with them a little bit more as far as why they wanted some additional funds. Number one, their initial fee had only planned on one single audit program. We actually had two single audit programs that needed to be audited. And then also too, we had forecasted some extra money in for the new GASB lease standard. I think there was some additional time that was spent on that as well by them, trying to locate multiple agreements and looking at trying to forecast new liabilities with that government standard. Then also too, just some timing delays, number one on both sides of the audit on our side, and then also too on theirs as well, to kind of getting the audit started and restarted. And that's been one of the big things that we've kind of discussed with them, that once we kind of get the audit started, we wanted to make sure that it gets finished so that we don't have this continued delay and run into February and March trying to get our audit report issued. So at this point in time, I feel comfortable to say, I'm okay with paying the additional fee. I know that they had submitted a contract proposals a couple years ago, knowing that a lot of inflation and cost increases and everything, probably, not to say it's an overall that significant of an increase, but it is somewhat of an increase, so.
Wow, it's a significant increase. We gotta have it, plus the single audit, we've got money coming in, so I'll make a motion we approve the increase by Ray Foley Inslee public account.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I do believe we have 2 more years left on our audit agreement. When we did the RFP, I believe it was a 5-year agreement. Looking at kind of some market and where things are, I believe if we went back out to market, say if we didn't want to re-engage them next year, I believe that we would be looking closer along these rates here. There's been some significant changes over the last 3 years that I think would come into play. So that's another factor that I took
Sure.
into consideration as well.
And then the recent engagement letter we just signed with them sticks with that contracting price, so it wasn't, they didn't feel like increasing that fee to kind of offset this as well too. We just kind of wanted to leave it year by year.
Are there any questions or comments on this item? No? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to the next item, which is the approval of the funding agreements with our outside agencies. This involves both our community partners, as well as we have a number of joint funded agencies that we don't do contracts necessarily with, because we have interlocal agreements. but the funding amount has been outlined for you all on those items as well. So we do contracts with our outside agencies that cover things. I shared an example with you all that said, you know, they come forward and they give us presentations regularly about what's going on. Some of them, they're electronic updates that I send to you as well. But this item here just allows us to have the city manager engage and get those contracts signed so that we can make sure they're meeting all of their standards before we issue any of the allocated amounts you see below. I've outlined what the request was from a lot of the agencies, as well as what has been is being put forward for funding. We did not provide all of the funding that was requested for many of the agencies, and we did have some new requests come in this year. We did not fund any new agencies that came in. We did look at some of the public purpose of some of those fundings, and we'll have some of those discussions with those agencies, but we did not issue any new outside agencies any funding.
And you go over those contracts too, don't you, to
Yes.
make sure they're
Yep.
public? Yeah.
Right, and that's, yeah, and their contract's required, because you have to have a written agreement that outlines what the public purpose is going to be. Chamber's a little unique, and tourism is unique, because there's a statute that addresses and authorizes those. And those are periodic payments as well. But yeah, that's kind of the standard form contract that we've been using for probably 5-6 years now. So yeah, I'll help Jamie with those.
I'd move we authorize the city manager and the city clerk to execute the agreement.
Do I have a motion? May I have a second?
Second.
Are there any questions or any revisions to any of the amounts you'd like to see below? There being none, those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. This brings us to item D, which is discussion related to the curfew of minors. Commissioner Fields had brought this item up last commission meeting, so we wanted to briefly address that we do currently have a ordinance on the books for curfew for minors, and we wanted to have a discussion to see the type of behaviors that we wanted to make sure that we are not seeing occur. There are certain things like vandalism, noise, certain behaviors that cannot occur when people are out, no matter what age cannot occur, that we need to address. So, Brian, did you want to lead off anything else there?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to talk about this. So, yeah, this is an older ordinance that a lot of cities adopted, you know, decades and decades ago. And I think when we look at this, the approach is, what are you all getting complaints about? Because someone may be having an issue that turns out isn't really addressed through the curfew ordinance, but might be addressed through noise or other ordinances that we have on the books here that the police department and others are certainly used to addressing and enforcing. And part of this too is an education with the community. You know, you may not know that your neighbor is taking offense to walking through their yard or playing the music and that's disturbing them at different hours. Certainly the city has many ordinances in effect that are dependent on time. I mentioned the noise ordinance, that's a great one. When a neighbor mows the yard at 3 p.m. and you hear the lawnmower, that's expected. If the neighbor's mowing the yard at 3 a.m. or running the chainsaw, there probably needs to be a really good reason for that. So it's certainly legitimate to have different expectations based on timing. There's no question about that. You can regulate the time and place and many things. So I think when this came to me, my question was, okay, what are folks struggling with, or what are they seeing that is troublesome and bothersome and is a nuisance, and what's the best tool to use to address that? And then kind of on the bigger picture, sometimes it's just an educational thing, both with younger folks and with parents and with other community members as well. But I think too, not everything should maybe be a 911 call. Certainly if it's an emergency, it should be. But I know Chief Thomas would want folks to reach out to the police department if there's something happening, because if they don't have the ability to see it for themselves, it makes it much, much harder from a community policing standpoint to be there, to be engaged, to have conversations and to help on those situations. So I think if there's specific things that are happening that's causing concern, let's talk about what those are and see what the best way to address that is, and there's probably a multifaceted approach to that.
Some of the complaints that I've received have to do with kids taking shortcuts through people's property. Sometimes they're in bunches or groups, you know, they're kind of laughing and loud and talking. Every now and then you'll hear some music, and I've also heard complaints of younger kids riding their bikes late at night, and they don't have any of the reflector lights or whatever they had supposed to have on their bikes. So we've all seen, as I mentioned last month, and probably read about it too, where sometimes a young person is shot or actually killed because, you know, they're turning around their car in somebody's driveway and somebody shoots. Or we don't want anything to happen to our kids who are out at night. And I think the biggest problem is when we talk about, when they start calling about kids being out at night, is there is no adult at home to supervise these kids. So the kids are pretty much doing what they want. We need to make the community aware that we do have a curfew ordinance. And hopefully, if the community is aware that some of the commotion that's going on, no vandalism has been reported, some of the just walking around in people's neighborhoods will cease because somebody could get hurt seriously. And I think Chief Thomas and some of his crew have already talked to some kids who have been out late at night and said, you know, as gently as possible, you guys need to move on, or something of that nature. But I'm sure when they drive off, they just kind of come right back and start all over again. So I think if we make the adults and kids and everybody in this community aware that we do have an ordinance, maybe this will cut down on some of the telephone calls we get about kids being out late at night.
Yeah, and to reiterate, so on weeknights, what some of us would call school nights, even though it's summer. So Sunday night through Thursday night would be 11 p.m. And then Friday nights and Saturday nights it extends until 1 a.m. And that's the time restrictions that are in the ordinance. And of course it doesn't apply when you're with a parent, when you're in a vehicle. You know, this is more of the loitering, the out walking around, and obviously when there's constitutionally protected reasons or emergency reasons, that's not what this applies to. It applies to other things.
Have you all gotten any calls, Chief Thomas, at the?
Yeah, I checked this morning, since January, we've had 82 calls from juveniles, but. 82, but none of them have to do with curfew. Everything has to do with, you know, stuff in the county. There's a couple calls, and most of it's during the day. I think we had one call in January that had to do with curfew, but we don't get many calls about that. It's pretty much initiated. We see some juveniles out, we'll initiate ourselves. But I definitely want you to have whoever's, you know, if they call us, we'll come and check it out. And our process is to either take them home or contact the parent. And if it becomes a bigger problem, then, you know, 3 or 4 times, then we actually give them a citation and have them go before CPW to the courthouse. So that's our process, but we've not had a lot of calls about that at all. And we would definitely respond to those calls if they check into it a little further. But I did, after your conversation we had last month, I did make all patrol aware, so that we've been out looking, not had any contacts, but and they're not going to be out in the open where you really see them either. You know, they're going down the cars coming on the road, they probably won't die. But if you hear something, please let us know. Have those folks call us when it's happening. We can nip it in the bud at that point.
I think you're right, Commissioner Fields. We just need to publicize that this that there is a curfew ordinance and, some basic information at the times, so people are aware.
When we put it out, it took care of the problem almost immediately.
Yeah.
And this generation may not even know that.
Exactly, it's been that long that there is even.
So, we're gonna leave our ordinance as it is. We're gonna hope that the media will make the community aware that we do have this ordinance. And hopefully I won't get too many more phone calls pertaining to this, so.
I think we posted on social media, which is what we're doing, and then I think you're suggesting the bulletin board at the library.
A lot of people. And we can leave some information also at places like the Y, things of that nature.
They've been getting a lot of people at the Teen Center. At the Y this summer.
That's all I have pertaining to that matter.
Thank you, ma'am.
Well, I think it's also, putting the minors, I guess, the fireworks, because I know we posted on social media that coming up to Sparks, they're going to be flying between now and July the 4th. So I think that's something that's.
Yes, absolutely, and hopefully none will be flying between now and July 4th, because
Almost
July
started.
4th is
It's
the
too
only
late. It's
authorized
already
day.
It started already.
Already.
It started. It's already started. In my neighborhood anyway.
Unauthorized, but that's okay.
It started.
That brings us to outside agencies. Lauren, did you want to kick us off?
Good morning. First off, I want to acknowledge, thank you all so much for your all's continued support in our funding every year. We really appreciate it, and wholeheartedly, without the support, we could not be able to do and grow the chamber the way it has been grown over the last few years. I do want to kind of address Commissioner Burke's comment a little bit about the outside agencies funding. I know, I understand, but I do want to address it just quickly. $27,500 is a toss in the bucket for the promotional efforts that the chamber and the tourism groups have done over the last 5 years. We have generated a healthy economy downtown just through our promotional efforts, and we have grown the economy in the small business sector. And I just wanted to make that aware of how much we have done.
I totally understand. I'm just putting that out there.
Thank you.
Letting you know.
And I just wanted to make you all aware, because there was one breath where it said we need to increase our economy and increase jobs, and then in the second breath it was like, okay, let's cut the agencies.
No, I did not say cut the agency.
That's what he meant.
Little worrisome there. That's all I have to say about that. Secondly, we are just so excited about the growth and the efforts for Leadership Bourbon County, and we've been having consistent meetings about that. And so next month we're excited to do Equine and Agriculture Day. That is a huge day that got a lot of fun attention last year. Something that we're also really working on is revamping our youth leadership program. We're going to try to start meeting with the Extension Office to partner with them on our youth leadership program for this year, because they have some tools and resources that we're really excited about adding into the program and growing that as well. We are very, very, very hot and heavy into Legends of Bourbon County Festival for November. Probably a good majority of our efforts between now and November will be dedicated to that. I will be meeting with Jamie on Friday to kind of go over our expectations on what you guys will expect from us before I ever bring anything to the commission. I just want to make sure that I have everything in line, paperwork-wise, for submittals to you guys before I ever bring anything to you all. So I just wanted to have a quick expectations meeting, and then make sure that I'm meeting what you guys want from that festival, because it is a festival that we're not going to be used to as far as street closures, disruptions of, business. It's just going to be it's going to be big, and there's a lot of people throughout the nation coming to our community that weekend. So we're getting a lot of calls, we're getting a lot of Facebook messages. Just our brick sales alone have clarified that people are going to be coming to our community. They're all over the nation. So we need to make sure that we're prepared for that type of crowd. So, any questions? Also, that, I just want to clarify, that festival is under a different umbrella separate from the chamber. But the chamber runs the festival. So we have dedicated that as its own independent 501c3. It's called Legends of Bourbon County. Every year, our goal is to grow and develop that festival into a bigger, more successful festival. We are lucky in year one because we're celebrating Secretariat. So we have an opportunity to financially grow the festival, and B, start out with a really good foundation for what the festival offers for tourists. So the goal is to have this every year as well. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Andrea?
Good morning, everyone.
Good.
Good morning.
I've been working on a list here. This is my last report to you all. So I'll go through the updates, and then I'm going to talk really briefly about transition. This is my last couple of days here. Technically, my last day is June 30th. With annual leave, it is Wednesday. It's tomorrow. So I have been working hard on making sure that the transition between the work that has to be done with application review and staff reports and all of that there's a smooth pass off, because we have received our applications for the month of July and have had technical review for those applications. So the new person will be delivering those reports for those applications at the hearings. So Planning Commission, I just want to let you know, we have a couple of subdivisions that you'll notice there is new construction happening on. Magnolia Trace, they've pulled their building permits and they're starting construction on those townhomes out near Walmart. Additionally, in the Bourbon Oaks subdivision, which is right next to Houston Oaks, they're working on single-family homes there as well. So if there's anything I could ask for in stepping out of this role, it's to see some larger new housing construction happening for our community. And I hope to see that increase over time. For the Board of Adjustment, we have had several applications for variances, a lot of them for infill development. And that is another area that I'm happy to see more activity on for affordable housing, because what we found is that infill development translates to more affordable growth for our community. I am, leaving with the Joint Code Enforcement Board just having been established. And I look forward to hearing, with Joanne George and her recent personal situation. I'm looking forward to hearing about a potential new appointment to that board. We also are still waiting on North Middletown to make their appointment. The fiscal court has made their 2 appointments to the joint board, so I will try my hardest looking forward to sitting down with some others that are going to be working directly with the new director to make sure that the Joint Code Enforcement Board establishment, continues. So my hope is that we could get those new appointments and potentially have a first meeting maybe the end of July, maybe early August. So I'm setting up the work plan for the new person, obviously. The last couple items I want to mention, the Revitalization Overlay District, that's another item that I am handing off. And so the Planning Commission has reviewed and voted on a zone text amendment for the ability of the city to establish a an overlay district. So it essentially empowers the city to establish a neighborhood district. So it could be for the West Side neighborhood, it could be for other neighborhoods within the city of Paris. The next item that has to be considered is a zone map amendment, and that will be specifically for the West Side neighborhood. And with that, there's a notice that has to be sent out. So letters will be sent out to every property within that area. So there will be notice, there will be a public hearing. So that's another item that I'm going to be passing on to the next person to continue seeing it through. The last item, and this is a little bit tangent, the Juneteenth celebration was recently, and I know that well, I had an integral role in that, but Vanessa in particular wanted to express her gratitude to the city for, you know, opening up the electrical access there. For the police were helping with loading and unloading. They weren't just there for safety, they were also helping load and unload materials. So that was a great, successful event, and I'm just, I'm happy to be a part of that and wanted to express that gratitude to the city. The last item, the new hire. So Dalton Belcher, he is going to be our new director of planning. I want to express that I have full confidence in this individual to do an excellent job. He is coming down from the city of Covington. He has worked as their zoning administrator for the city. He's been in charge of zoning enforcement. He reports to the Board of Adjustments. He reports to the Planning Commission. He reports to the Board of Architectural Review. He's doing a lot of the same things that I have been doing here, and will be able to hit the ground running when he starts on July 12th. So I do want to express that I have full confidence in him, and I have offered to also provide transitional support as he comes in on July 12th. So I've offered to the Planning Commission if they want to contract with me as a 1099, I'll come in a couple hours a week, you know, and just kind of help with things. So that offer is still on the table, and I'm truly looking forward to you know, helping introduce him to you all. And I think one of the things I was most impressed with, aside from his experience in the field, is that he cares, and that's hard to find in candidates. And so July 12th is his start date, and I'll look forward to setting up some introductions for you all. So that's all I have. And lastly, just thank you. I mean, you know, the last 7 years, I couldn't have told you on day one that I would be here 7 years, but this Paris is now my home, and so I'm not going anywhere, and I look forward to continuing to be involved, just in a different way. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Andrea.
Yes, thank you, Andrea. Certainly want to express, while it's only been a year that I've had a pleasure to work with you, it's been a great year, and I've been very impressed the way your department has tackled and moved items forward. And I know I've said that a couple of times, and you've joked that you've been working on those items for a very long time. But from my point of view, they seem to have moved pretty quickly, so I appreciate all you do.
Is Vanessa back there?
Yes, she is.
Vanessa, come up here to the table, please, ma'am. Would you mind sharing with the commission about the Garrett Morgan anniversary program that Westside is
Planning?
planning?
Okay. Garrett Morgan's anniversary for the stoplight will be 100 years this year in November. So what the Westside is doing is we're planning to do something with the Hopewell Museum, because that in November, that would be the place to do it. So we are going to be getting together with Denise to do something special for that event. And it will probably be at the end of November, because the date for the 100-year anniversary is November the 20th.
Which is a Monday.
Yeah. So we would be doing something over a weekend, either the weekend before or the weekend after that. And I'm gonna make sure that nothing else is gonna be on the calendar for that. So we wanna get on the calendar and get the news out there right away. Cause, Lauren's, yours is at the beginning of the month, right?
Yeah, 10, 11, and 12.
Okay, so we don't, because when we had Juneteenth, Hopewell was open doing something for Garrett Morgan that day, showing the film. They had the film, people here who did that film. So we don't wanna run into anything, cause we're a small community and we want everybody to be able to get around and see everything that's being done. Any questions? No?
Vanessa, the following weekend is Thanksgiving weekend, so we'll probably do
Yeah, the weekend before, yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
That brings us to staff reports. Are there any staff members?
I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
It's gonna be tough for everybody for a little bit.
Yeah.
Just to update everyone, I've spoken to a couple of you. I had a conversation with FEMA about how to reinvigorate, if that's the right term, some of our empty flooded lots that were acquired 20 years ago at least. They weren't overwhelmingly receptive, but they've given us a glimmer of hope. So I'll get with Jamie and we'll see how maybe we can divide some duties and then look to have a further conversation with them to come up with a solution on some of these properties so that they just look a little better and a little more inviting in the neighborhoods that they're in. So we'll continue that discussion. But we had a really good conversation and very pleasant, very cordial. So hopefully we'll be able to pursue that.
No, I don't have anything.
I have a couple of things, no surprise. I did want to mention that we received the retirement notice of two long-term employees, Billy Doyle and Pat Harney. Those were expected. We knew that they were coming at some point, but wanted to indicate that that department has had a number of employees who have been here a very long time and serve the community very well. They've worked very hard to keep things going through good times, bad times, and everything in between. So those retirements are scheduled to occur at the end of the month. We will be having some discussions about paths forward and interim assignments, and we'll keep you up to date once all of that information is finalized. But we certainly will arrange a little something to make sure that we thank both of those employees for their years of service and dedication to the community. We talked about the audit today. We have been in contact with the auditors to get the list of documents and everything, so we are trying very hard to work to get ahead of the curve this year on the audit, so we will be moving those along. I know a lot of the staff involved in the audit, this will be their first year being involved with the audit because we have had some significant transition this year, but I have full confidence in them and we'll dig into anything that we need to do so to make sure that's successful. The new utility rates are scheduled. We had implemented a ordinance that had 3 years worth of utility rate changes. The July utility bills, which are the ones people would receive in August, are scheduled to have the third year of year 3 of those rate changes. So we are making preparations to make sure that's all in order and ready. We will obviously put information on the bills, on social media, on our website to make sure that everybody's aware of the change in the rates, but wanted to make sure that everybody knew that was coming. We did receive a request from Parks and Recreation. They have a clause in their interlocal agreement that any unbudgeted expense over $5,000 is required to come to both the city and the fiscal court. That's a similar parameter that's in a lot of our interlocal agreements. They did have a mower break and go down, and it is not something that they're able to repair, so they are in need of replacing a mower. At this time, I don't have the dollar value that they're looking at. They were not able to get that to me before this meeting. But our discussions at the Parks and Recreation Board was about 12 grand, is that
I think so,
what
yeah.
we're looking at? So, to the pleasure of the commission, if you are comfortable giving the authority, now we can take a vote to approve that, or if you would rather we wait until they get all of their quotes in.
No, I say go on, the grass is still mowing, or growing, so. No, I would
It's
move
not gonna
it
wait on
through, up to whatever.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries, thank you. And then the last thing for me is just to mention that we had previously agreed that there would be no first meeting in July. At this point, we don't have anything on tap that would require us to schedule that meeting, but if something changes in the next couple of weeks, we will certainly let you know. So the next time we will be back together for commission meeting will be July 25th. That is when I am scheduled to be in Florida, so Kevin will be up here with you all that period, but we will make sure he is well prepared for any questions that you all may have. That's it from me. Mayor?
I just want to express, on behalf of the city, express our condolences to Patty Carpenter's family. She's passed away, so lifelong employee here at the city, so express our sorrow for the family's loss.
Nothing.
I should have mentioned last time, Captain Jim Frakes, so I think a 30-year employee of City of Paris. I went to his memorial last Saturday. And anybody that knew Jimmy, we told a lot of stories, a lot of laughter. So I guess the way, I hope that's what happens when I go. There are plenty of stories. Brian had a visitor from your neighborhood, came by this weekend, and basically said they talked to a lot of neighbors, and just when the time comes, wanted to be involved in discussions about Station 3 when it, down the road, when that starts, the talk starts back up. And I said, well, our attorney lives in your neighborhood, so I'm sure, we'll make sure you're involved to the point that we can let you be. So, and that's all.
And I don't have anything, but I'll move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Ryan, you got a second?
Sure.